Hello, friends. I know I'm just an average guy telling creepy stories, but if you like them and get the scare you're craving for, please leave a like and subscribe. Enjoy the stories. I couldn't look away. The screen glowed in the dark, its light clawing at my eyes, pulling me into a place I didn't want to go but couldn't escape. My laptop sat on the cluttered desk, surrounded by empty coffee mugs and crumpled notes from a life that felt distant now. The hum of the fan was the only sound in my apartment. A faint reminder of normalcy, but it couldn't drown out the pounding in my chest. I'd stumbled into something I wasn't supposed to see, something that felt alive, watching me as much as I was watching it. The dark web wasn't a place I'd meant to end up. It started with curiosity, a late-night spiral down internet rabbit holes, chasing whispers of forbidden things. Now, I was here, staring at a live feed that made my stomach churn and my skin prickle with dread. It began with a link. Just a string of random characters buried in a forum post I found while digging through obscure tech boards. The post was vague, a user claiming they'd found something real but warning others to stay away. Most dismissed it as a creepypasta or a scam, but something about the way it was written, clipped, urgent, almost panicked, stuck with me. I copied the link, hesitated, then opened Tor. The browser loaded slowly, each click dragging me deeper into a corner of the internet that felt wrong, like stepping into a house where the air is too thick and the walls seem to whisper. I pasted the link, hit enter, and waited. The page loaded, black at first, then a grainy video feed flickered to life. No title, no interface, just a raw stream. The room on the screen was dim, concrete walls stained with streaks of something dark. Rust, maybe, or worse. A single metal chair sat in the center, bolted to the floor, its surface scratched and dented. Chains hung from the arms, glinting faintly under a flickering fluorescent light. The camera was static, unblinking, focused on that chair like it was waiting for something to happen. I leaned closer, my breath shallow, unable to tear my eyes away. There was no sound at first, just the image, but the silence was heavy, oppressive, like the moment before a storm breaks. Then, movement. A figure stepped into the frame, and my heart lurched. They were tall, draped in a black hooded coat that hid their face in shadow. Their movements were slow, deliberate, like they knew they were being watched. They carried a metal tray, the kind you'd see in a hospital, but the tools on it weren't medical. A hacksaw, a pair of pliers, a knife with a blade that looked too long, too sharp. My mouth went dry. I wanted to close the laptop, to unplug it and pretend I'd never seen this, but my hands wouldn't move. The figure set the tray on a small table beside the chair, arranging the tools with care, each clink of metal against metal making me flinch. I told myself it was fake. It had to be. People staged things like this for attention, for shock value. But then the figure turned, and for a split second I swore they looked right at the camera, right at me. The hood hid their eyes, but I felt it, a cold, piercing stare that made my skin crawl. They turned away, disappearing off screen, and I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The feed went still again, just the empty chair and the tray of tools, but the air in my room felt different now. Heavier, like something had followed me out of that screen. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time blurred as I sat there paralyzed, waiting for something to happen. My cursor hovered over the browser's close button, but I couldn't click it. Part of me needed to know what came next, even as every instinct screamed to run. Then a sound, a low, guttural moan, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't coming from my speakers. It was coming from the feed. The camera didn't move, but the noise grew louder, closer, until a second figure stumbled into view. They were bound, hands tied behind their back, a burlap sack over their head. Their clothes were torn, stained with dirt and what looked like blood. They staggered, legs trembling, as the hooded figure reappeared, shoving them toward the chair. The bound figure resisted, their muffled cries growing desperate. But the hooded one was stronger, forcing them down with a brutal shove. The chains clinked as they were fastened, locking the person's wrists to the chair's arms. The sack was yanked off, and I froze. The face was swollen, bruised, one eye nearly shut from the swelling. Blood trickled from a split lip, and their hair was matted with sweat. They were young, maybe my age, their eyes wide with terror as they scanned the room, then locked onto the camera. For a moment, I thought they could see me, their gaze pleading, begging for help. My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't staged. No actor could fake that kind of fear. The hooded figure stepped back, picking up the knife from the tray. They held it up, letting the light catch the blade, turning it slowly as if savoring the moment. The person in the chair screamed, a raw animal sound that cut through me like glass. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside my head now, echoing. The hooded figure didn't react, didn't speak. They just moved closer, the knife gleaming as they raised it. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were glued to the screen. The blade pressed against the person's arm, not cutting, not yet, just resting there, a promise of what was coming. The victim thrashed, the chains rattling, their screams turning to sobs. The hooded figure tilted their head like they were studying their prey, then dragged the knife lightly across the skin, leaving a thin red line. Blood welled up, slow at first, then faster, dripping onto the concrete floor. The camera caught every detail, the way the blood pooled, the way the victim's body shook, the way their screams turned to gasping whimpers. My hands were trembling now, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I felt sick, but I couldn't stop watching. The hooded figure set the knife down and picked up the pliers. They grabbed the victim's hand, forcing their fingers flat against the chair's arm. The pliers closed around a fingernail, and I knew what was coming before it happened. The victim's scream was unlike anything I'd ever heard, a sound so raw it seemed to tear through the screen and into my chest. The hooded figure worked slowly, methodically, pulling the nail free with a wet, ripping sound. Blood poured from the wound, and the victim's body convulsed, their heads slamming back against the chair. I gagged, my hand flying to my mouth. My apartment was silent except for my ragged breathing and the faint hum of the laptop. I wanted to believe this was fake, a sick performance, but the details were too real. The way the blood glistened, the way the victim's body twitched, the way the hooded figure moved with such calm precision. They weren't rushing, weren't frantic. They were enjoying this. The feed continued, unrelenting. The hooded figure switched tools, picking up the hacksaw. My heart stopped. I didn't want to see what came next, but I couldn't close my eyes. The victim was barely conscious now, their head lolling to one side, blood dripping from their hand onto the floor. The hooded figure grabbed their arm, pinning it to the chair, and began to saw. The sound was horrific, a grinding, wet scrape, bone and flesh giving way under the blade. The victim's body jerked, a weak, broken scream escaping their lips before they went limp, their chests still rising and falling, but just barely. Blood sprayed, splattering the concrete, the chair, the hooded figure's coat. The camera didn't flinch, didn't cut away. It stayed focused, capturing every sickening detail, the way the saw caught on bone, the way the flesh tore, the way the blood kept coming, pooling beneath the chair in a dark, viscous puddle. I was shaking now, my hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do anything but sit there and watch, but I was trapped, just like the person in the chair. The hooded figure paused, stepping back to admire their work. The victim's arm was a mangled ruin, blood dripping steadily, their body slumped in the chair. The figure tilted their head again, then turned to the camera. This time, there was no mistaking it. They were looking at me. Not just at the camera, but at me, through the screen, into my apartment, into my soul. My blood ran cold. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The room was dark, the glow of the screen gone, but the images were burned into my mind. I sat there trembling, my breath hitching in my throat. The silence was deafening, but it wasn't empty. I felt watched, like something had followed me out of that feed, something that knew I'd seen it. I wanted to believe it was over, that closing the laptop had severed the connection, but deep down, I knew it hadn't. I'd crossed a line, stepped into a place I couldn't come back from. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the apartment, every shadow in the corner, felt like a threat. I kept the lights on, my back pressed against the wall, staring at the laptop like it might spring to life on its own. I wanted to delete the browser, smash the hard drive, burn the whole thing to ash, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. Not yet. Because part of me, some sick, twisted part, needed to know what happened next. And that terrified me more than anything. The laptop sat on my desk like a cursed object, its closed lid mocking me in the dim light of my apartment. I hadn't touched it since slamming it shut, but the images from that feed clawed at my mind, vivid and unrelenting. The blood, the screams, the hooded figure's slow, deliberate movements. They looped in my head, a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't even moved from the corner of my room where I sat, back pressed against the wall, eyes fixed on the machine. The air felt wrong, thick with a dread I couldn't shake. It was as if the room itself had changed, like something had seeped through the screen and lingered here with me. I told myself to destroy it, smash the laptop, burn the pieces, move on. But my hands wouldn't obey. Deep down, I knew why. That twisted part of me, the part I didn't want to acknowledge, was still hooked. I needed to know what happened next, even if it meant diving back into that hell. The thought made my stomach churn, but it was stronger than my fear, stronger than reason. By morning, my resolve crumbled. I had to go back. My fingers trembled as I opened the laptop. The screen flickered to life, and for a moment, I expected the feed to be there, waiting like it had never stopped. But the browser was closed, the Tor window gone. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the icon. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to walk away, but I clicked. The browser loaded, sluggish as before, each second stretching into eternity. I didn't have the link anymore. I'd deleted the forum post in a panic, but I remembered the string of characters burned into my memory like a brand. I typed it out, my heart pounding, and hit enter. The page loaded instantly this time. No delay, no buffering. The same concrete room filled the screen, the same metal chair, the same stains on the walls. But the chair was empty now, the chains dangling loose. Blood still pooled on the floor, dark and congealed. The tray of tools was gone, the table bare. The silence was deafening, broken only by a faint drip, 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 like water or something thicker, falling somewhere off screen. I leaned closer, my breath shallow, scanning the room for any Xuan system, any sign of the hooded figure or the victim. The camera remained fixed, unblinking, on the empty chair, as if waiting for the next act in this sick theater. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time lost meaning in that suffocating silence. My eyes burned from staring, my body tense, expecting something to break the stillness. Then a sound, a low metallic scrape, like a door being dragged open. My heart lurched. The hooded figure stepped into the frame, their black coat glistening with fresh stains, the same deliberate slowness in their steps. They weren't alone. Dragging behind them was a new figure, bound like the last, hands tied, a sack over their head. This one was smaller, their frame slight, their struggles weaker as they were shoved toward the chair. The hooded figure chained them down, the clink of metal echoing through the feed. The sack was ripped off, revealing a face so bruised and bloodied it was barely recognizable as human. Their eyes were wide, darting frantically, their mouth gagged with a strip of cloth. Blood matted their hair, and their clothes hung in tatters, exposing raw red wounds across their chest. My stomach twisted, bile rising again. This wasn't fake. It couldn't be. No one could fake that kind of pain, that kind of despair. The hooded figure didn't speak, didn't hesitate. They picked up a new tool from somewhere off-screen, a thin, curved blade like a filleting knife. They held it up, letting it catch the light, and the victim's muffled screams filled the room, raw and desperate. I gripped the edge of my desk, my nails digging into the wood, unable to look away. The blade pressed against the victim's cheek, slow and deliberate, drawing a thin line of blood that ran down their face like tears. The hooded figure tilted their head, studying the wound, then pressed harder, carving a deep, jagged gash. Blood poured, soaking the gag, dripping onto the victim's lap. Their bodies shook, their screams muffled but piercing, each one a knife in my chest. I wanted to vomit, to scream, to do anything but watch. But I was frozen. The hooded figure worked with that same calm precision, moving the blade to the victim's shoulder, slicing through fabric and skin in one smooth motion. The camera caught every detail. The way the flesh parted, the way the blood welled up in thick, dark waves, the way the victim's body convulsed against the chains. The hooded figure paused, stepping back, their head tilting as if admiring their work. Then they turned, And I swear they looked at the camera again, at me, their hidden eyes boring through the screen. My breath caught, my heart slamming against my ribs. I slammed the laptop shut again, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it together. The room spun, my vision blurring as I gasped for air. I stumbled to the bathroom, retching into the sink, my body heaving with the weight of what I'd seen. The images wouldn't leave me. The blood, the blade, the victim's eyes, pleading for a mercy that wouldn't come. I splashed water on my face, but it didn't help. Nothing could wash this away. I stayed there, hunched over the sink for what felt like forever, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. It was a performance, a sick prank, a deep fake. But the truth gnawed at me, undeniable. Those screams, that blood, the way the hooded figure moved. It was real, and I'd watched it, sat there like a coward, doing nothing. The guilt was suffocating, mingling with the fear that clung to me like damp rot. I avoided the laptop for the rest of the day, pacing my apartment, jumping at every sound. The city outside my window buzzed with life, oblivious to the horror I'd witnessed. I wanted to call someone, tell them what I'd seen. But who would believe me? The police? They'd think I was crazy, or worse, they'd ask questions I couldn't answer. How do you explain stumbling onto a live torture feed on the dark web? How do you explain why you didn't look away? By nightfall, the pull was back, stronger than ever. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't resist. I needed to know if it was still happening, if there was a chance to do something. Anything. I opened the laptop, my hands clammy, and reloaded the page. The feed was gone. The screen was black, with a single line of text. Connection terminated. My heart sank, a mix of relief and dread. Was it over? Or had they moved somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't find? I sat there, staring at the blank screen, my mind racing. The guilt was overwhelming now, a crushing weight. I'd done nothing while someone suffered, died maybe, right in front of me. I tried to reason it away. There was nothing I could have done, no way to find them, no way to stop it. But the truth was uglier. I'd been too scared, too weak, too paralyzed by the horror to even try. Then a sound, a faint ping from my laptop. A new window had opened, a chat box I hadn't seen before. A single message sat there, cold and stark. You watched. My blood turned to ice. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I unplugged it, yanked the battery out, and shoved it under my bed as if that could keep it away. But it was too late. They knew I'd seen it. They knew I was there. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Every shadow in my apartment felt alive, every noise a threat. I kept my phone off, my curtains drawn, my door locked. But the feeling never left, the sense that I was being watched, that something was coming for me. I couldn't shake the image of the hooded figure, their head tilted, their unseen eyes fixed on me. And I couldn't shake the truth. I'd stepped into their world, and now I was part of it. Whether I wanted to be or not, there was no going back. The apartment was no longer mine. It looked the same peeling paint on the walls, same coffee stains on the carpet, same hum of the fridge in the kitchen, but it felt alien, like I'd been dropped into a stranger's life. The laptop, gutted and shoved under my bed, was a dead thing now, its battery and cables scattered across the floor like severed limbs. But it didn't matter. The message, "You watched," burned in my mind, brighter than any screen. They knew I'd seen it. They knew where to find me. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with a presence I couldn't name but felt in every shadowed corner. I hadn't left the apartment in days. The outside world felt too exposed, too vulnerable, like stepping onto a stage where unseen eyes waited in the dark. I'd unplugged every device, covered my phone's camera with tape, even draped a blanket over the laptop's remains, as if that could keep it contained. But the dread followed me, a weight that clung to my bones. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the windows sent my heart racing. I kept a kitchen knife on the table beside me, its blade catching the dim light of the single bulb I left on at all times. Sleep was a memory, replaced by a jittery haze where every blink brought flashes of blood, chains, and that hooded figure's tilt of the head. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the message was a glitch. A generic pop-up meant to scare anyone who stumbled onto the feed. Maybe they didn't know who I was, where I was, but the lie crumbled every time I closed my eyes and saw those words. You watched. It wasn't just a statement. It was an accusation, a claim. I'd been part of it, complicit in my silence, my cowardice. The guilt was a living thing, gnawing at me, whispering that I deserved whatever came next. It started with the noises. At first, I thought it was the building, old pipes groaning, neighbors moving furniture, but they were too rhythmic, too deliberate. A faint tapping, like fingers on glass, coming from the window. I'd check, heart pounding, but the street below was empty, the glass cold and unbroken. Then it was scratching, soft but insistent, from the walls, like something clawing its way through. I told myself it was rats, or the wind, or my mind unraveling. But the sounds grew bolder, closer, until they seemed to come from inside the apartment itself. One night I woke, or thought I woke, the line between sleep and waking blurred by exhaustion, to a low hum, like static from a dead TV. It was coming from under the bed. I froze, my breath caught in my throat, the knife clutched in my sweating hand. The hum grew louder, pulsing, and I swore I heard a voice woven into it, a whisper too faint to make out but heavy with intent. I didn't dare look. I stayed there, rigid, until dawn, when the sound faded, and the apartment fell silent again. But the silence was worse, like the calm before a blade falls. I couldn't stay like this. I had to know if they were coming for me, if they could find me. I needed proof it was real, or not real, anything to break the spiral. Against every shred of sense, I decided to rebuild the laptop. My hand shook as I reconnected the battery, plugged in the cables, and powered it on. The screen flickered, and my heart sank as the desktop loaded, unchanged, as if it had been waiting for me. I opened Tor, my fingers moving on autopilot, typing the link I'd sworn to forget. The page loaded instantly, and the room was there. Concrete walls, metal chair, bloodstains darker now, almost black. But something was different. The chair wasn't empty. A figure sat there, unbound, their back to the camera. No chains, no sack, just a slumped shape in a tattered coat, their head bowed. The hooded figure was nowhere in sight. The camera's focus was softer, the image grainier, like it was being broadcast from a different source. I leaned closer, my breath shallow, trying to make sense of it. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound, but there was something familiar about them. The slope of their shoulders, the way their hair hung in greasy strands. Then they turned, slowly, deliberately, their heads swiveling until they faced the camera. My blood froze. It was me. My face, pale and hollow, eyes sunken, staring back through the screen. But it wasn't right. My skin was sallow, my mouth twisted in a way I'd never seen, like a mask of myself stretched over something wrong. The eyes were the worst, empty yet alive, watching me with a cold, unblinking intensity. I screamed, a raw, broken sound, and slammed the laptop shut, scrambling back until I hit the wall. It wasn't possible. I hadn't been there, hadn't been taken. I was here, in my apartment, my hands trembling, my pulse hammering in my ears, but the image lingered, seared into my mind. Was it a trick? A deep fake? A hack? Something to mess with my head? Or had I crossed some line, some boundary between watcher and watched, where the dark web didn't just show you horror but pulled you into it? I didn't touch the laptop again that night, but I couldn't stay away for long. The next day I opened it again, driven by a need I couldn't explain. The feed was back to normal, or as normal as that hell could be. The chair was empty, the bloodstains unchanged, but the tray was back, its tools gleaming under the flickering light. No hooded figure, no victim, just the room, waiting. I stared, my heart in my throat, expecting my own face to appear again. But nothing happened. The feed was still silent, until a new sound broke through. A low, wet gurgle, like someone choking on liquid. A figure stumbled into view, not from the side but from the bottom of the frame, as if they'd been lying just out of sight. They were naked, their body a map of wounds, cuts, burns, patches of skin peeled away in ragged strips. Blood dripped from their mouth, Their eyes rolled back, showing only whites. They crawled, dragging themselves across the concrete, leaving a smeared trail of red. My stomach lurched, but I couldn't look away. The camera zoomed in, unprompted, focusing on their hands. Fingers broken, nails gone, the flesh raw and oozing. The gurgling grew louder, more desperate until they collapsed, their body twitching once, then still. The hooded figure appeared, stepping over the body like it was nothing. They carried a new tool, a handheld torch, its flame hissing blue. They knelt beside the body, and I braced myself, knowing what was coming but powerless to stop watching. The flame touched skin, and the body jerked, a scream tearing through the feed despite their stillness. The smell of burning flesh seemed to fill my apartment, though I knew it was impossible. The hooded figure worked slowly, charring patches of skin, the camera catching every blister, every blackened curl of tissue. I gagged, my hand over my mouth, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to stop, to close the laptop, but my body wouldn't move. Then the screen flickered, and the feed changed. Not the room, not the chair, but my apartment, my desk, my coffee mugs, my window with its drawn curtains. The camera angle was wrong, high, like it was mounted in a corner of my ceiling. I spun around, heart pounding, searching for a lens, a device, anything, nothing. The room was empty, but the feed showed me, sitting there staring at the laptop, my face pale and frozen. I screamed, slamming the laptop shut, but the image was already inside me, undeniable. They were here, not just watching, but here in my world, their reach stretching through the screen. I tore through my apartment, checking every corner, every shadow, the knife shaking in my hand. Nothing. No cameras, no wires, no sign of intrusion. But the feed had shown my room, my face, my life. I wasn't just a viewer anymore. I was part of the show. I didn't know what to do. Run? Hide? Call for help? But who would believe me? The police would think I was insane, and if I told anyone, I'd have to admit what I'd seen, what I'd done, or hadn't done. The guilt was a noose, tightening with every breath. I'd watched people suffer, die, and I'd done nothing. Now, it was coming for me. As I sat there, trembling, a new sound broke the silence, a faint tap at the window. I froze, the knife slipping from my hand. The tapping grew louder, rhythmic, deliberate. I didn't want to look, didn't want to know, but my eyes betrayed me, drawn to the curtains. A shadow moved behind them, tall and formless, its edges bleeding into the dark. The tapping stopped, and the silence was worse, heavy with promise. Then, a whisper, so soft I wasn't sure I heard it. You watched. The room went cold, and I knew with a certainty that crushed me that they were here, not in the feed, not on the screen, but here, with me. And they weren't done. The shadow behind the curtain didn't move, but its presence was a weight, pressing against the air, squeezing the breath from my lungs. The whisper, you watched, hung in the room. Not just a sound, but a violation, like fingers brushing the back of my neck. The kitchen knife lay on the floor where I'd dropped it, useless now, its blade dulled by the reality of what I faced. My apartment, once a refuge, was a trap. Its walls no longer a barrier, but a stage for whatever had followed me from that cursed feed. I didn't know if it was human, machine, or something worse, but it was here, and it knew me. I backed away from the window, my bare feet sticking to the cold floor, my eyes darting to every corner. The laptop, slammed shut but still humming faintly, seemed to pulse under the bed, a heartbeat I couldn't silence. The tapping at the window had stopped, but the silence was alive, thrumming with intent. I grabbed the knife, my hands slick with sweat, and crouched beside the couch, listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no whispers, just the oppressive quiet that felt like it was waiting for me to move, to make a mistake. I couldn't stay here. I had to leave, to run, to find help. But the thought of stepping outside, of facing the world where they could be waiting, was paralyzing. The feed had shown my apartment, my face, my life. They weren't just watching. They were inside my reality, rewriting it. I glanced at the door, its deadbolt still locked, but it felt flimsy, like paper against whatever was out there. I needed to know what I was up against. Needed to face it or I'd never escape. With trembling hands, I crawled to the bed and pulled the laptop out. Its weight felt heavier, like it carried the blood and screams I'd witnessed. I opened it, the screen flaring to life, and the Tor browser was still there, the link already loaded as if it had been waiting. The feed flickered on, and I braced myself for the concrete room, the chair, the blood. But it wasn't there. The screen showed darkness, a void so deep it seemed to suck the light from my room. Then, slowly, shapes emerged. Not the room, but a hallway, long and narrow, its walls cracked and stained, lit by a single flickering bulb. The camera moved, gliding forward, as if carried by someone or something walking. My heart stopped. The hallway looked familiar, too familiar. The peeling paint, the warped floorboards, the faint hum of a distant furnace. It was my building. The camera turned a corner, and there was my door, its faded number 4B unmistakable, the scratch marks from my old cat still visible on the frame. I dropped the laptop, scrambling back, my breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. The knife shook in my hand as I stared at the door, waiting for it to burst open, for the hooded figure to step through. But nothing happened. The feed kept moving, the camera passing through my door like it was air, into my apartment. It panned across the room, the couch, the coffee mugs, the blanket draped over the chair, then settled on me, crouched in the corner, clutching the knife. My own face stared back, pale and terrified, my eyes wide, my mouth open in a silent scream. But I wasn't alone. Behind me, in the feed, stood the hooded figure, their black coat blending into the shadows, their head tilted, watching. I spun around, swinging the knife wildly, but the room was empty. No figure, no coat, just my own panicked breathing echoing off the walls. I looked back at the screen, and the figure was gone. The feed frozen on my image, alone, staring at myself. My mind reeled, grasping for logic. Was it a hack? A live feed from a hidden camera? Or something worse, something that didn't need cameras to see me? I slammed the laptop shut, but it didn't matter. The truth was sinking in. They weren't just in the feed. They were here, inside my world, bending it around me. A sound broke the silence, a low, wet gurgle, like the one from the feed coming from the bathroom. My blood ran cold. I gripped the knife, my legs trembling as I forced myself to move, inching toward the door. The gurgle grew louder, joined by a faint scraping like nails on tile. I didn't want to look, didn't want to know, but I had to. I pushed the door open, the hinges creaking, and the smell hit me first, coppery, thick, like blood left to rot. The bathroom was dark. The bulb burned out, but the streetlight filtering through the window cast jagged shadows. Something lay in the tub, a shape too large to be human, but too alive to be anything else. It twitched, its limbs bent at wrong angles, its skin glistening with a sheen that wasn't water. The gurgling came from its throat, a gaping wound that pulsed with each sound, blood bubbling over the edges. Its face, or what should have been a face, was a ruin. Eyes gone, mouth torn into a lipless gash. It moved, dragging itself up, its broken fingers clawing at the porcelain. I stumbled back, the knife falling from my hand, my scream caught in my throat. The thing in the tub wasn't just a body, it was the victims, all of them, their pain stitched together into a nightmare that shouldn't exist. It reached for me, its arms stretching too far, too fast, and I ran, slamming the bathroom door behind me. I grabbed a chair, wedging it under the handle, but the gurch system. Scraping grew louder, a wet, grinding sound like bones being crushed. The door rattled, the chair shaking under the force of whatever was on the other side. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst, the knife forgotten on the floor. The gurgling stopped, replaced by a low, keening moan that made my skin crawl. It wasn't human. Couldn't be human. But it knew me. Knew my fear. Knew my guilt. The door splintered, a crack splitting down its center, and I bolted for the front door, fumbling with the deadbolt. My hands were slick, the lock slipping under my fingers, but I got it open and ran into the hallway, the cold air hitting me like a slap. The corridor was empty, the flickering bulb casting long, twisted shadows. I didn't wait. Didn't look back, just ran for the stairs, my bare feet slapping against the worn steps. The building was silent, too silent, like it had been hollowed out, leaving only me and whatever was coming. I burst onto the street, the city alive with noise, cars, voices, the hum of life, but it felt distant, unreal. I ran, my breath burning in my lungs, my eyes scanning for help. A cab idled at the corner, its driver leaning against the hood, smoking. I shouted, waving my arms, but he didn't move, didn't even look at me. I stumbled toward him, my voice hoarse, begging for help. But he just stared through me, his eyes empty, his cigarette burning down to ash. The street tilted, the world blurring at the edges. I turned, and there it was, the hooded figure, standing under a streetlight, their coats swallowing the light around them. They didn't move, didn't speak, just tilted their head, the same slow, deliberate motion from the feed. I backed away, my legs weak, my vision swimming. The city seemed to fade, the sounds muffled, the lights dimming, until it was just me and them, alone in a void. I ran again, my feet bleeding on the pavement, my lungs screaming. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care, just needed to move, to escape. But every corner I turned, they were there, a shadow that didn't chase but followed, always just out of reach. My mind fractured, the lines between reality and the feed dissolving. Had I ever left my apartment? Was I still there, staring at the screen, trapped in their world? I collapsed in an alley, my body giving out, my breath coming in ragged sobs. The walls closed in, the air thick with the stench of rot and blood. I felt them before I saw them, the weight of their presence crushing me. The hooded figure stepped into view, their knife gleaming in the faint light, its blade crusted with dried blood. They knelt beside me, their face hidden, their silence louder than any scream. I tried to move, to fight, but my body was heavy, useless, pinned by their gaze. "You watched," they said, their voice a low rasp, not human, not machine, something else. The knife pressed against my cheek, cold and sharp, drawing a thin line of blood. I didn't scream, didn't beg. I was empty, hollowed out by the horror I'd let in. The blade moved, slow and deliberate, carving a path down my face, the pain distant, like it belonged to someone else. Blood dripped onto the ground, pooling around me, and I saw it then. The camera, mounted high on the alley wall, its red light blinking, watching. They wanted me to know. This was the feed, my punishment. I'd watched, and now I was the show. The hooded figure leaned closer, their breath hot and sour, and the last thing I felt was the blade, sinking deep, and the last thing I saw was the camera's unblinking eye, broadcasting my end to whoever was watching. I couldn't look away. The screen glowed in the dim light of my bedroom, the only sound the faint hum of my laptop fan and my own shallow breathing. I'd been scrolling through forums for hours, chasing whispers of something I wasn't even sure I wanted to find. The internet is a labyrinth, and I'd wandered too deep, past the safe corners of memes and cat videos, into places where the rules don't apply. That's when I found it. A post buried in a thread on an obscure site. No title, just a string of numbers and a single word. Enter. My cursor hovered over the link. Every instinct screamed to close the tab, but my finger clicked anyway. The page loaded slowly. A black screen with a single red box in the center. No text, no instructions, just the box pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat. I clicked it. A new window opened, and my webcam light flickered on. My face appeared, grainy and pale, staring back at me. Before I could process it, the screen cut to black again. And then, something else. A live feed. A room, small and grimy, lit by a single flickering bulb. The walls were stained, streaked with something dark and wet. In the center was a chair, rusted metal, bolted to the floor. Strapped to it was a man. He was shirtless, his chest heaving, skin slick with sweat. His head hung low, but I could see his face. Ordinary, maybe 30, with a scruffy beard and wide, terrified eyes. Duct tape sealed his mouth, muffling what sounded like sobs. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a movie. The feed was too raw, too unpolished. The camera angle shifted slightly, like someone was adjusting it, and I caught a glimpse of a figure in the background, clad in black, face hidden behind a featureless mask. They held a knife, long and thin, glinting under the bulb's sickly light. I tried to close the window, but my cursor wouldn't move. The screen seemed to pulse, locking me in. My keyboard was unresponsive. Panic clawed at my chest, but I couldn't stop watching. The masked figure stepped closer to the man in the chair, dragging the knife along the armrest, the metal screeching. The man's muffled screams grew louder, his body jerking against the restraints. The figure tilted their head, almost curious, then pressed the blade against his forearm. A thin line of red appeared, slow at first, then spreading as the knife dug deeper. Blood welled up, dripping onto the floor, pooling in the cracks of the concrete. The man's eyes rolled back, his body convulsing as the figure carved, slow and deliberate, like they were savoring it. I wanted to scream, to unplug my laptop, but my hands wouldn't move. It was like the screen had hijacked me, my eyes glued to the horror unfolding. The figure stepped back, admiring their work. A jagged symbol etched into the man's arm, raw and oozing. They reached off-screen and returned with a new tool, something that looked like a handheld torch. My heart pounded as they flicked it on, a blue flame hissing to life. The man's muffled cries turned to shrieks as the flame touched his skin, the smell of burning flesh almost palpable through the screen. His body arched, the restraints cutting into his wrists, blood and charred skin mixing in a grotesque tableau. The feed cut abruptly to a chat window. Text scrolled fast, usernames I didn't recognize, their words a sickening blur of excitement. "More," one wrote. "Burn him again," said another. Numbers flashed. Bids, I realized, in cryptocurrency. They were paying for this. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. I tried to move again, to slam my laptop shut, but my body wouldn't obey. The screen flickered, and a new message appeared, addressed to me. "You're in now. No leaving." The feed returned to the room. The man was slumped, his chest barely moving, skin blackened in patches where the torch had kissed it. The masked figure was gone, but the camera panned slowly, revealing more of the space. The walls weren't just stained. They were smeared with handprints, some fresh, some crusted over. A table in the corner held tools, pliers, a hacksaw, a syringe filled with something murky. My mind screamed that this was fake, a sick prank, but the details were too real. The way the man's sweat glistened, the texture of his burned flesh, the faint drip of blood hitting the floor. The figure returned, holding the syringe. They jabbed it into the man's neck, and his body jolted, eyes snapping open. Whatever they'd injected him with wasn't meant to kill him. It was to keep him awake. His screams, though muffled, were raw, animalistic, as the figure picked up the pliers. They gripped one of his fingers, twisting until the nail tore free with a wet snap. Blood sprayed, and the chat exploded with approval, bids climbing higher. I felt sick, my vision blurring. But the screen held me, my reflection still visible in the corner, my own horrified face a mirror to the man's. The figure worked methodically, peeling back another nail, then another, each one slower than the last. The man's hands were a mess of blood and exposed flesh, his body trembling so violently the chair rattled. The figure paused, turning to the camera, their mask reflecting the light like a void. They raised a gloved hand, pointing directly at the lens, at me. My breath caught, my heart slamming against my ribs. The chat went silent, then a new message. "Pick the next tool." My screen changed. A menu appeared listing options: knife, torch, pliers, drill. Below it, a timer counted down from 10 seconds. My hands shook as I tried to move the cursor to shut it down, but nothing worked. The timer hit 0, and the chat roared back to life, votes flooding in. Drill, they'd chosen. The figure nodded, as if they could hear the crowd, and picked up a cordless drill from the table. The bit was rusted, stained with something dark. They pressed it against the man's thigh, the motor whining as it bit into flesh. Blood sprayed in arcs, bone fragments visible as the drill burrowed deeper. The man's muffled screams were deafening now, his body seizing, veins bulging in his neck. I was crying, tears streaming down my face, but I couldn't look away. The screen seemed to pulse with every twist of the drill, every spurt of blood. The figure stopped, pulling the drill free, a chunk of flesh dangling from the bit. They turned to the camera again, and this time, text appeared over the feed. "Your turn soon?" My blood ran cold. I didn't understand. How could they know me? My webcam light was still on, my face still in the corner of the screen. I tried to cover it, to smash the camera, but my hands were lead, my body frozen. The man in the chair was barely alive, his breathing shallow, blood pooling beneath him. The figure tilted their head as if deciding what to do next. They picked up the hacksaw, its teeth glinting. The chat went wild, bids soaring, demands for more. The figure dragged the blade across the man's chest, not deep enough to kill, just enough to open the skin in a long red line. Blood poured, mixing with the sweat and burns, his body a canvas of agony. I wanted to vomit, to scream, but I was trapped, my mind screaming while my body betrayed me. The screen flickered again, and a new window opened. A map, my city, my street. A red dot pulsed over my address. My heart stopped. This wasn't possible. I lived alone, my doors locked, my windows shut. But the dot didn't lie. The chat laughed, messages flooding. "Run! You're next! No escape!" The feed cut back to the room, but the man was gone. The chair was empty, blood still dripping from its edges. The figure stood alone, facing the camera, their mask filling the screen. They raised the hacksaw, still wet with blood, and drew a finger across their throat. My laptop shut off. The room went dark, the hum of the fan gone. I sat there trembling, my eyes locked on the black screen. Then I heard it, a faint creak like a floorboard settling. My house was old, it made noises, but this was different, closer. I grabbed my phone, my hand shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. The battery was dead, though I'd charged it hours ago. Another creak, this time from the hallway. My heart pounded, my breath hitching. I stood, my legs weak, and crept to the door, peering into the dark. A shadow moved at the end of the hall, tall and still. I froze, my pulse deafening. The shadow didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there, watching. Then a glint, a blade, catching the faint moonlight from a window. I backed away, my mind racing, searching for a weapon, a plan, anything. The shadow took a step, slow and deliberate, the floor creaking under their weight. I stumbled back into my room, slamming the door, my hands fumbling with the lock. It clicked, but it felt useless, like it couldn't stop what was coming. The doorknob rattled, soft at first, then harder. My breath caught, my eyes darting to the window. I could run, climb out, but the shadow was already here, already inside. The rattling stopped, and for a moment, silence. Then a voice, low and muffled, like it came through a mask. "You clicked the link." The door splintered, and I screamed. The door burst inward, wood shards spraying across the room like shrapnel. I stumbled back, my bare feet slipping on the cold floor, heart hammering so hard it felt like it would tear through my chest. The shadow filled the doorway, a silhouette of black against the dim hallway, the glint of the blade in their hand winking like a cruel promise. The mask was featureless, a smooth void where a face should have been, but I could feel their eyes on me, boring into my skull. My room, my sanctuary, felt like a trap now. The walls closing in as the figure took a slow step forward. I scrambled toward the window, my hands clawing at the latch. It was stuck, rusted from years of neglect. The figure didn't rush, didn't speak, just advanced with that same deliberate pace, the knife dragging along the wall, carving a thin, screeching line. The sound was worse than the sight. Metal on drywall, a slow, torturous grind that matched the pounding in my head. I yanked at the window again, my nails splitting as the latch finally gave. Cold air hit my face, but before I could hoist myself out, a gloved hand clamped around my ankle. The grip was iron, yanking me back with a force that sent me crashing to the floor. My head smacked the hardwood, stars bursting in my vision. The figure loomed over me, their mask inches from my face, the knife hovering above my chest. I thrashed, kicking, but their weight pinned me, the blade's edge grazing my skin cold and sharp. Blood trickled from the shallow cut, warm against the chill of my terror. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the room, by the mask, by the suffocating certainty that no one would hear. "You clicked!" The voice rasped again, muffled and distorted, like it came from somewhere deep inside the mask. They tilted their head, studying me, the knife tracing lazy circles over my sternum. My breath hitched, every muscle locked in place, waiting for the plunge. But it didn't come. Instead, they stood, dragging me up by my shirt, the fabric tearing as they shoved me toward my desk. My laptop was there, screen black but alive, the webcam light glowing green. The feed was back, the same grimy room, the same rusted chair, now empty but slick with blood. The chat window pulsed with new messages. "New guest. Make it slow. Show us." I tried to pull away, but the figure's grip tightened, their knife pressing into the small of my back. "Sit," they said, shoving me into the chair. My hands shook as they landed on the keyboard, the screen flickering to a new prompt. "Choose." The same menu from before, knife, torch, pliers, drill, stared back at me, the timer already counting down from 10. My mind screamed to resist, to fight, but the blade at my back was a cold reminder of my options. The chat roared, usernames flashing, their words a sickening chorus of demands. "Drill her," one said. "Burn her face," another urged. Numbers climbed, bids, bets, payments for my pain. I slammed my hands on the desk, sobbing. I didn't ask for this. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just pressed the knife harder, a bead of blood welling at the tip. The timer hit 0, and the chat's choice flashed. Pliers. My stomach dropped. The figure reached into a bag at their feet, pulling out a pair of rusted pliers, the kind you'd find in a toolbox, but stained with something dark and crusted. They grabbed my hand, pinning it to the desk, their glove cold against my skin. I screamed, thrashing, but they were stronger, their grip unyielding. The pliers closed around my thumbnail, the metal biting into the flesh. Pain exploded as they twisted, slow and deliberate, the nail tearing free with a wet, ripping sound. Blood poured, pooling on the desk, my screams choking in my throat. The chat erupted, messages scrolling so fast I couldn't read them, but the tone was clear. Glee, hunger, a faceless crowd feasting on my agony. The figure didn't stop, moving to the next finger, the pliers clamping down again. I begged, my voice raw, but they were deaf to it, their mask a blank slate as they ripped another nail free. My hand was a mess of blood and exposed flesh, each pulse of pain a hammer to my skull. The screen flickered, and the feed changed. The room on the screen wasn't empty anymore. Another figure stood there, masked like the one beside me, holding a syringe. The camera panned to a new chair, a new victim. A woman, her face bruised, her eyes wide with the same terror I'd seen in the man before. The chat shifted, splitting their attention between her and me, bids flying for both. 2 at once, someone wrote. Make them scream together. My captor tilted their head, as if considering the suggestion, then turned back to me, the pliers still dripping with my blood. They leaned close, their mask brushing my ear, and whispered, "You're live now." My reflection filled the screen, my face pale, streaked with tears and blood, my hand a mangled ruin. The chat loved it, their words a blur of sadistic delight. I tried to focus, to find a way out, but the pain was overwhelming, my mind fraying at the edges. The figure stepped back, swapping the pliers for the knife again. They dragged it across my arm, not cutting, just teasing, the blade's edge a cold promise. I flinched, my body trembling, every nerve screaming to run, to fight, but there was nowhere to go. The door to my room was still open, splinters scattered across the floor, but the hallway beyond was dark, empty. No neighbors, no help. I lived alone, miles from anyone who might notice I was gone. The figure seemed to know this, their movements calm, assured, like they'd done this before. They pressed the knife against my throat, the tip pricking just enough to draw a bead of blood. "Choose," they said, nodding at the screen. The menu was back, the timer ticking down again. I shook my head, sobbing, but they grabbed my hair, yanking my face toward the laptop. Choose, or I do. My vision blurred with tears, but I saw the options. Torch, drill, saw. The chat was screaming for the saw, bids climbing into numbers I couldn't comprehend. I couldn't do this, couldn't pick a tool to hurt myself or someone else. But the knife at my throat didn't waver, and the timer was at 3 seconds. I clicked torch, my hand shaking so badly I could barely move the mouse. The chat roared with approval, and the figure nodded, almost pleased. They reached into the bag, pulling out a small handheld torch, the kind welders use, its nozzle gleaming in the dim light. They flicked it on, the blue flame hissing to life. I screamed, trying to pull away, but they pinned my arm to the desk, the flame inching closer. The heat hit first, a searing wave that made my skin tighten. Then the fire touched me. Pain unlike anything I'd ever felt tore through me. My flesh blistering, bubbling, the smell of burning skin choking me. I thrashed, my screams hoarse, but the figure held me steady, the flame moving in slow, deliberate strokes, carving a pattern into my forearm. The chat was ecstatic, messages flooding, bids soaring. More, they demanded. Deeper. The figure stopped, the torch clicking off, my arm a charred ruin of red and black. I was sobbing, my body shaking, but they weren't done. They turned to the screen, typing something I couldn't see. The feed switched again, showing the woman in the other room, her body strapped to the chair, the second masked figure looming over her with a drill. Her screams echoed through my speakers, syncing with my own, a duet of agony for the faceless crowd. The figure beside me tilted their mask toward me, and I swore I saw a flicker of a smile beneath it, though it was impossible to tell. My laptop pinged, a new message popping up. "You're a star now." The map reappeared, the red dots still pulsing over my house, but now there were others. Dots scattered across the city, the country, the world. How many rooms like this existed? How many others were trapped, their pain live-streamed for profit? The figure grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at the screen, at my own reflection, my face unrecognizable through the blood and tears. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, not one pair but many, heavy and deliberate. Shadows moved in the dark, more figures, more masks. The first one stepped back, gesturing to the others who carried tools, saws, hammers, things I couldn't name. The chat exploded, the bids skyrocketing. My vision swam, the pain in my arm pulsing with every heartbeat. The new figures surrounded me, their masks gleaming, their blades catching the light. "You clicked," one said, their voice a chorus with the others. The door slammed shut, and the screen went black. The room was a void, the only light the faint glow of my laptop screen flickering back to life. The webcam light burned green, my reflection a ghost in the corner, eyes hollow, face streaked with blood and ash. My charred arm throbbing with a pain so deep it felt like it was eating me alive. The figures surrounded me, their featureless masks reflecting fragments of the room, their tools glinting with malicious intent. The air was thick with the stench of my burned flesh and the metallic tang of blood. My screams had faded to whimpers, my throat raw, my body trembling on the edge of collapse. But they weren't done. The chat on the screen was alive, a writhing mass of usernames and demands. Their words, a sickening pulse that matched the rhythm of my fear. "You're a star," one of the figures said, their voice muffled but sharp, cutting through the haze in my mind. They stepped closer, their gloved hand gripping a hammer, its head stained with something dark and crusted. Another held a saw, its teeth jagged and hungry. The third figure, the one from before, still held the knife, twirling it lazily, like this was a game. My chair creaked as I shifted, the ropes they'd tied around my wrists and ankles biting into my skin, already raw from my earlier struggles. The knots were tight, professional, like they'd done this 100 times. The screen flickered and the feed switched to the other room, the woman in the chair, her body slumped, blood pooling beneath her. The drill was still in her captor's hand, its bit dripping red, chunks of flesh caught in its grooves. Her screams had stopped, her eyes glassy, but her chest still rose and fell. Barely. The chat didn't care. "Finish her," one message read. "Break her legs," another demanded. Numbers flashed, bids climbing higher, thousands, tens of thousands in currencies I didn't recognize. My stomach churned, bile rising again, but I had nothing left to vomit. My captors didn't speak, didn't need to. The one with the hammer stepped forward, raising it over my knee. I screamed, thrashing against the ropes, but they held fast, cutting deeper into my wrists. The hammer paused, hovering, the figure's mask tilting as if savoring my terror. The chat exploded, votes pouring in, the timer ticking down again. "Smash it," the crowd roared. "Make her beg." The hammer swung down, and pain obliterated everything. Bone crunching, muscle tearing, my knee a shattered ruin. I screamed until my voice broke, my vision swimming with black spots, the world tilting. The figure stepped back, admiring their work, my leg limp and useless, blood seeping through my jeans. The chat cheered, their words a blur of sadistic glee. The one with the saw moved next, kneeling beside me, the blade's teeth grazing my thigh. "No," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Please." They didn't answer, just pressed the saw against my skin, dragging it back and forth. Slow at first, the pain a searing line that grew deeper with each pass. Blood sprayed, warm and sticky, coating the floor, my clothes, their gloves. I screamed again, my body convulsing, the ropes tearing into my flesh as I fought to escape. The screen pinged. A new message. "She's strong. Break her more." The knife wielder stepped forward, their blade catching the light as they carved a slow line across my collarbone. Blood welled, dripping down my chest, mixing with the sweat and tears. The pain was a symphony now, every nerve screaming, my mind fracturing under the weight of it. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, could only feel the agony and the cold certainty that I wasn't getting out of this. The feed switched again, showing a new room, another chair, another victim. A man this time, older, his face swollen and bruised, his hands bound with wire that cut deep into his skin. A masked figure stood over him, holding a syringe filled with something green and viscous. They injected it into his neck, and his body seized, veins bulging, foam bubbling at his lips. The chat went wild, bids soaring, demands for more. "What's in the syringe?" one asked. "Make him choke," another wrote. I realized then, these weren't isolated rooms. This was a network, a web of torture chambers, each feeding the same sick audience, their hunger bottomless. My captors turned back to me, the one with the knife leaning close, their mask inches from my face. "You're next," they whispered, their voice a low hiss. They typed something on my laptop, and the screen changed to a new menu. Choose her fate. The options listed below: acid, fire, dismemberment, suffocation. The timer ticked down, the chat screaming their preferences. I shook my head, sobbing, "I won't." The knife pressed harder against my throat, blood trickling down my neck. "Choose," they said again, their voice colder now, final. I couldn't. I wouldn't. But the timer hit 0, and the chat's choice flashed. Fire. The figure with the torch stepped forward, flicking it on, the blue flame hissing like a snake. I screamed, begging, but they didn't hesitate. The flame touched my shoulder, my skin blistering instantly, the pain so intense I thought I'd pass out. But I didn't. Whatever they'd done to me, maybe the syringe I hadn't noticed them use, kept me awake, trapped in the agony. The flame moved down my arm, the same one they'd burned before, the charred flesh splitting open, oozing blood and pus. The smell was unbearable, choking me as I screamed. The door creaked open again, and I froze. Another figure entered, dragging something, a body, limp and bloodied, but alive. It was the man from the first feed, his skin a patchwork of burns and cuts, his eyes barely open. They dumped him at my feet, his blood mixing with mine on the floor. The chat roared, messages flooding. Both of them. Make them fight. Cut them together. The figures didn't move, just watched, their masks reflecting the flickering torchlight. I realized then, they weren't just following orders. They were enjoying this, feeding off the pain as much as the audience. The man groaned, his fingers twitching, reaching for nothing. I wanted to help him, to do something, but my body was broken, my strength gone. The figure with the knife knelt beside him, slicing a shallow line across his chest, blood welling instantly. He screamed, weak and ragged, and the chat loved it, their bids climbing higher. My captor turned to me, their mask tilting. "You're part of it now," they said, and I understood. Clicking that link hadn't just trapped me. It had made me complicit, my presence fueling the machine, my pain another product for sale. The screen flickered, showing the map again, red dots pulsing across the globe. Hundreds, maybe thousands, each one a room, a chair, a victim. My house was just one node in their network, my suffering just one stream in their endless feed. The figure with the torch stepped closer, the flame hissing, and I knew what was coming. I screamed, my voice breaking as they pressed it against my chest, the fire eating through skin and muscle, the pain beyond comprehension. My vision blurred, but the screen held my gaze, my reflection burning alongside the man at my feet. Footsteps echoed again, more figures entering, their tools gleaming. The chat demanded more blood, more pain, more death. The knife wielder typed something, and the screen flashed a new message. Final act. The figures moved as one, surrounding us, their blades and flames and hammers ready. I looked at the man, his eyes meeting mine, a flicker of shared despair. We were nothing to them, just meat for the machine, our screams the currency of their world. The torch flared again, and the saw began to hum. My screams joined the man's, a chorus of agony for the faceless crowd. The figures closed in, their masks a wall of blank horror, and I knew there was no escape. The screen pulsed, the chat a frenzy, and as the first blade bit into my flesh, I realized the truth. I wasn't just a victim. I was the show. The pain was a living thing, a beast devouring me from the inside out. My chest burned where the torch had kissed it, skin blackened and peeling, each breath a knife twisting in my lungs. The man at my feet was silent now, his body still, blood pooling beneath him like a dark mirror. The figures circled us, their masks gleaming under the dim light, tools raised like offerings to some unseen god. The laptop screen pulsed, the chat a relentless storm of voices, hundreds, maybe thousands, demanding more, their bids climbing into obscene numbers. My reflection stared back, unrecognizable, a broken thing with hollow eyes and a face smeared with blood and ash. The ropes bit into my wrists, my shattered knee throbbed, and my burned arm hung useless, every nerve screaming. I was beyond fear now, teetering on the edge of something darker, something final. The figure with the knife stepped forward, their blade dripping with the man's blood. They tilted their head, the mask a void that swallowed the light. "Final act," they said, their voice a low rasp, echoing the message on the screen. The chat erupted, messages scrolling so fast they blurred into a single sickening chant. "End her, make it slow, show us everything." The figure raised the knife, its edge catching the glow of the webcam, and I braced for the cut, for the end. But they didn't strike. Instead, they turned to the laptop, typing something I couldn't see. The screen flickered, and a new prompt appeared. Choose her end. The options were grotesque. Suffocation, dismemberment, acid, exsanguination. The timer ticked down, 10 seconds, each one a hammer blow to my chest. The chat voted, their excitement palpable, a digital mob baying for blood. I shook my head, my voice gone, my body trembling with the weight of what was coming. The timer hit 0, and the choice flashed. Dismemberment. My stomach dropped, a cold wave of nausea crashing over me. The figure nodded as if approving and reached for the saw, its teeth still wet from earlier. I screamed, or tried to, but all that came out was a choked gasp. The ropes held me fast, my body too broken to fight. The figure knelt beside me, the saw's blade grazing my thigh just above my shattered knee. The chat was ecstatic, bids soaring, messages demanding details. Start with the leg, show the bone, make her watch. The figure with the torch stepped closer, the flame hissing, ready to cauterize whatever they cut. I couldn't look away. My eyes locked on the screen, on my own reflection, on the man's lifeless body, on the red dots pulsing across the map. This wasn't just my room, my pain. It was a global machine, a network of suffering, and I was its latest offering. The saw bit into my thigh, the pain a white-hot explosion that drowned out everything else. Blood sprayed hot and thick, coating the figure's gloves, the floor, my lap. The blade moved slowly, deliberately, teeth grinding through muscle and bone, the sound a sickening crunch that echoed in my skull. I screamed until my throat tore, my vision blurring, but they'd injected me with something earlier, something to keep me conscious, to force me to feel every second of this. The chat cheered, their words a blur of sadistic joy, numbers climbing higher, as if my agony was a stock market soaring to record highs. The figure paused, the saw halfway through my leg, bone exposed, jagged and white amidst the red. They tilted their mask toward the camera, as if posing for the audience, then resumed, the blade's rhythm steady, unrelenting. My screams faded to sobs, my body shaking, blood loss making me lightheaded, but not enough to let me pass out. The torch wielder stepped in, the flames searing the wound, the smell of burning flesh choking me again. The pain was beyond comprehension, a universe of agony I couldn't escape. The chat demanded more, their hunger insatiable, and the figures obliged, moving to my other leg, the saw's teeth gleaming. I don't know how long it lasted. Minutes, hours, an eternity. My mind was unraveling, fragments of thought slipping away like water through my fingers. The man's body was still there, his blood mingling with mine, a grotesque pool that reflected the flickering light. The figures worked in silence now, their movements mechanical, practiced, like surgeons in a slaughterhouse. The screen showed the other rooms, other victims, their screams blending with mine in a symphony of horror. The map pulsed, red dots multiplying, each one a life being torn apart for profit, for pleasure. The figure with the knife returned, their blade tracing my face, not cutting, just teasing. "You clicked," they whispered, their voice a venomous hiss. "You chose this." I wanted to scream that I didn't, that I hadn't known, but the words wouldn't come. The chat was screaming for my face now, for my eyes, my tongue, anything to make the show last longer. The figure typed again, and the screen flashed a new message. Audience choice. The options were worse than before. Blinding, flaying, vivisection. The timer ticked down, and I knew it didn't matter what they chose. I was already gone, my body a shell, my soul shredded. The chat picked flaying. The knife wielder nodded, their blade glinting as they pressed it against my cheek. The first cut was shallow, peeling back a strip of skin like paper, blood welling instantly. I didn't scream anymore, there was nothing left in me. The pain was a constant now, a tide pulling me under. The figure worked slowly, methodically, skinning my cheek, my jaw, each strip pulled free with a wet rip. The chat was in a frenzy, bids in the millions, messages begging for close-ups, for more blood, more flesh. The webcam zoomed in, my ruined face filling the screen, my reflection a nightmare I couldn't recognize. The other figures joined in, their tools tearing into me, peeling skin from my arms, my chest, each cut precise, deliberate. Blood poured, my body trembling on the edge of shock, but whatever they'd given me kept me awake, trapped in the horror. The map on the screen grew, red dots spreading like a plague, the network expanding, feeding on pain, on fear, on lives like mine. I saw the woman from the other feed, her body broken, her eyes empty. I saw the man, his corpse still at my feet. I saw myself, or what was left of me, a sacrifice to the machine. The figures stepped back, their work done, my body a ruin of blood and exposed muscle. The chat was still screaming, demanding more, but the figures didn't move. The one with the knife leaned close, their mask inches from my face, and whispered, "Thank you for playing." They typed one last command, and the screen went black, the webcam light dying with it. The room was silent, the only sound my shallow breaths, the drip of blood hitting the floor. I waited for the end, for the final cut, but it didn't come. The figures left, their footsteps fading down the hall, the door swinging shut behind them. I was alone, tied to the chair, my body broken, my mind shattered. The laptop was dead, the screen blank, but I could still feel the chat, their eyes, their hunger, even in the dark. I didn't know if I was still being watched, if another camera was hidden somewhere, streaming my final moments to a new audience. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. My blood pooled, my body growing cold. I thought of the link, that single click that had brought me here, that had made me part of their game. I thought of the red dots, the rooms, the lives snuffed out for profit. I thought of the man, the woman, the countless others. My vision faded, the world slipping away, but the pain lingered, a final tether to this hell. And then, a sound, a creak, soft but deliberate, from the hallway. My heart, what was left of it, stuttered. Footsteps again, slow and heavy. The door opened, and a new figure stood there, their mask gleaming, a fresh blade in their hand. The laptop flickered back to life, the webcam light glowing green. The chat was back, their words a familiar chant. Again. I didn't scream. I didn't have the strength. The figure stepped closer, their knife raised, and I knew this was the end. But as the blade descended, I realized the truth. It wasn't the end. It was just another show, another stream, another life fed to the machine, and somewhere someone else was clicking a link, stepping into the dark, becoming the next star,